November 22nd, 1963, 12:30 p.m., Dallas, Texas. A shot rings out, and one single man, jumps from a moving car and sprints toward the most powerful person on earth. He is too late by 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds will haunt him for the rest of his life. This is the story of Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent who held President John F. Kennedy as he took his last breath. The trip to Texas was never supposed to be like this. The White House had made one thing absolutely clear to every Secret Service agent on the detail: maximum visibility, maximum exposure. President Kennedy and First Lady Jackie Kennedy wanted to be seen. They wanted the people of Dallas to feel close to them. No barriers, no distance, no wall of protection between the president and the crowd. That meant one thing for Clint Hill and his fellow agents: open cars, no bulletproof glass, no roof. Clint Hill had concerns. Every agent did, but they had no choice. On the morning of November 22nd, the motorcade moved through the streets of Dallas. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the roads, cheering, waving. The president was smiling. Jackie was radiant in her pink suit. Clint Hill was riding in the follow-up car, just 3 to 5 feet behind the presidential limousine. He stood on the left side of the running board, eyes constantly scanning. Buildings, rooftops, crowds, windows. At the Texas School Book Depository on the corner of Houston and Elm Street, he noticed 4 or 5 open windows. Some workmen sat on a ledge, watching the motorcade pass, just taking their lunch break. Nothing unusual. The motorcade turned onto Elm Street. They were almost done. In a few minutes, they would be on the expressway, heading to the president's speech at the Trade Mart. Clint Hill relaxed, just slightly. Then it happened. An explosive noise, sharp, violent, from somewhere behind and to the right. Clint Hill didn't recognize it as a gunshot at first. He started to turn toward the sound. He never finished turning, because what he saw in that split second changed everything. President Kennedy had grabbed his throat. He was falling to his left, slowly, stiffly, because of the back brace he wore under his suit. That's when Clint Hill knew. That was a gunshot. He jumped. Without thinking, without hesitation, he leapt from the running board and ran toward the presidential limousine. He pushed between a motorcycle officer and his own car. Engine noise roared around him. Later, agents told him there was a second shot fired during those seconds he was running. He never heard it. He was almost there. Almost. Just as his hands reached the back of the limousine, another shot. This one he heard. This one he felt. The president's head was down, and the bullet hit him in the back of the skull and tore through, erupting out of the upper right side of his head just above the ear. A piece of skull, still attached to the scalp, flipped forward like a flap. And from that wound, blood, bone fragments, and brain matter exploded outward. Over the back of the car, over Clint Hill, over Jackie Kennedy. Clint Hill pulled himself onto the back of the limousine. Mrs. Kennedy had climbed out onto the trunk. She was trying to gather the fragments that had been blown from her husband's head. He grabbed her, pushed her back into the seat. The president's body fell to the left, into her lap. Clint Hill looked at the man he had sworn to protect. The right side of his face was turned upward. His eyes were fixed, open, unblinking, unseeing. There was a hole in his skull, and in that hole, there was nothing left. Clint Hill turned to the agents in the car behind him. He gave a thumbs down. He screamed at the driver, Get to the hospital!" The motorcade erupted into chaos. The chief of police jumped in front in his own car and led them to Parkland Memorial Hospital, 4 minutes away, traveling at 70 miles per hour. Clint Hill wedged himself onto the back of the limousine, hooking one leg on the right side, gripping the left with his hands, trying not to slide off as the car careened through turns. Behind him, in the back seat, Jackie Kennedy held her husband's head in her lap. She spoke only once during that 4-minute drive. "Oh, Jack, what have they done? They've shot his head off. I have his brains in my hand. I love you, Jack." Then, silence. When they arrived at Parkland, no one was waiting outside. No gurneys, no medical team. An agent ran inside and found an orderly trying to push 2 gurneys through a door at the same time. They had gotten stuck. They finally got the president onto a gurney, but Jackie Kennedy wouldn't let go of him. She held him. Clint Hill pleaded with her. "Please, Mrs. Kennedy, let us help the president." No response. He said it again. Still nothing. And then Clint Hill understood. He had protected this woman for over 3 years. He knew her. She doesn't want anyone to see him like this. He took off his suit jacket. He covered the president's head and upper back. The moment he did, Jackie Kennedy let go. They lifted the President of the United States onto the gurney and rushed him into Trauma Room 1. While the doctors worked, Clint Hill's supervisor asked him to open a phone line to the White House in Washington. He found a phone in the emergency room and connected to the White House switchboard. He began briefing Washington on what had happened. Then the operator cut in. "Mr. Hill, the Attorney General wants to speak with you." Robert Kennedy, the president's brother. "Clint," he said, "what's going on down there?" Hill explained. There had been a shooting. The president had been hit. Governor Connolly had been hit. They were at the hospital. The doctors were doing what they could. "How bad is it?" Robert Kennedy asked. Clint Hill paused. He could not tell this man, this brother, that his brother was already gone. He chose his words carefully. "It's as bad as it can get." Robert Kennedy went silent, and then he hung up. At 1 p.m., 30 minutes after the shots were fired, a doctor emerged from Trauma Room 1. "I'm sorry, the president is dead. There's nothing more we can do." What followed was a blur of impossible tasks. Clint Hill arranged for a casket. He helped carry the president's body to Air Force One at Love Field. When they reached the rear door of the aircraft, they discovered the casket, with its handles, was too wide to fit through. They tore the handles off with their bare hands. Inside the plane, Vice President Lyndon Johnson was waiting to be sworn in as the 36th President of the United States. A federal judge had been located. The ceremony would happen on the tarmac before takeoff. Clint Hill was in the forward section of the plane when a message came from the back. Mrs. Kennedy wanted to see him. He walked through the plane to where she stood beside her husband's casket. She looked at him, this woman who had just watched her husband die in her arms, and she reached out and took his hand. "Oh, Mr. Hill," she said, "what's going to happen to you now?" She was asking about him, about the agents, about how they were coping. In the worst moment of her life, she was worried about someone else. "I'll be okay, Mrs. Kennedy," he told her. "I'll be okay." Minutes later, still wearing her pink suit, still stained with her husband's blood, Jackie Kennedy stood beside Lyndon Johnson as he was sworn in as president. She refused to change her clothes. "I want them to see what they've done," she said. Clint Hill served in the Secret Service for years after that day. He protected 4 more presidents. But November 22, 1963, never left him. For decades, he carried the weight of those 3 seconds. The 3 seconds between the first shot and the moment his hands reached the back of that limousine. He believed for a long time that if he had been just a little faster, a little closer, a little more ready, the president might have lived. 3 seconds. That is the distance between a man doing everything right and a tragedy that changed the world. Clint Hill was not a man who failed. He was a man who ran, without hesitation, toward danger, when every instinct said to take cover. He was a man who held a dying president, comforted a grieving widow, and carried a burden no human being should ever have to carry. And when Jackie Kennedy asked him if he would be okay, he said yes, even though he knew deep down that some wounds never fully heal. This has been Valor Untold. If this story moved you, share it with someone who should hear it, because these stories deserve to be remembered.